Another thing I wanted to get you up to date on, and just as I think we mentioned this last time, but is the multi-zone valves. One thing that we keep seeing, well, we have seen on occasion enough to make me concerned, and that is installation of these valves and not properly protecting from freezing. And what I mean by that is the most common problem I see is where you are pumping down a hill. Usually when you pump up a hill, you put your multi-zone at the top, you drain back to your lift pump, that force line, and then you drain it out to your line. So that thing sinks to the top, and everything drains out, and that's beautiful. But where we see it is sometimes whether we're pumping down a hill or using a flout, and you have this check or trap in that line. That's a problem. We're seeing water freezing inside of that check where it goes up into that valve. So we want to stay away from ever doing that and make it so that there's a continuous fall. If you're pumping down a hill, a continuous fall down that line through the valve and out of valve so no water never sets underneath of it or inside of it. So definitely remember that. If we see that, that's not going to be acceptable. The other thing that happens, and this, again, you probably heard this at least once. The other problem that happens when you create a check of water underneath that valve is you create a situation where it double doses. When that pump actuates, it first pushes out that water that's in that trap, and it seats that plunger inside of there. It doses that small amount in the trap. Plunger comes back up, indexes, and then your next slug comes through while that air sat in that line. So what you're doing is you're skipping zones when you've created that problem. So leaving a shape like this or a trap of some sort to trap water is definitely a problem. We want to avoid that always. So just keep that in mind with multi-zone valves. They've worked well for us so far. They're a very simple device, simple to fix if something happens to it. But yet, those small things will cause problems if we're not careful.
So the small particles.
Yes. Yeah, certainly. The other problem we see is usually during startup, we've seen pebbles and plastic and all sorts of little things that get inside of the valve. When we do an inspection, we're going to make sure all the zones get water, make sure there's not something going on with it. And the common problem we see there is when it doesn't happen, you open it up, and there's the pebbles, there's the dirt, there's the plastic shavings, the glue chunks that have gotten in there. So be very careful. When you're sliding your line through the dirt, you don't want to be getting stones and dirt up in there, else it will plug the mold. I did want to just talk very briefly. I know very few of you do flouts, but I did want to update those of you who do them, what we've recently learned. There are a handful of systems in this county who dose into a mound with a flout, and they work. But what we originally were trying to do is put a 3-inch pipe from the flout to the mound, trying to save on friction. Friction's a big concern because you've got the head from the height of the mound, the static head pushing on the mound, and you want to minimize the friction as it makes its way there, right? Makes sense? But what we found was something that nobody could have known, but plumbers probably have known forever: air. We would design systems that would have, you would hope to see 7 or 8 foot of squirt height on one of those. And then, of course, it dissipates, because as the water makes its way down that pipe, that dissipates all at the same time. We were getting, when we put a 3-inch feed pipe on there, we were getting no more than 28 inches. I don't care if you put 12 foot higher, 28 inches. So I sat and struggled over all this. Why is this happening? I can't understand this. Well, I stumbled on some guy in British Columbia who studied this, and he did, and we're not going to have time for the video, so if you want to see him afterward, you come on up and see him. But he studied this, and he put clear plastic pipe in there to see all the different arrangements of 2-inch, 4-inch, 3-inch. Guess what? 3 inch is the worst stuff you can use. And the reason why is because it entraps air in the line. Plumbers have known this for years. You've got to vent your plumbing or else you entrap air and it causes all sorts of problems, slow drainage. But here's a 3-inch pipe coming down, and there's just gobs of air circulating inside this 3-inch pipe. You never would have guessed it. And when that happens, all you ever get is 28 inches of head, distal head. So the next one that went in, and 28 inches, you can live with it, but it was a little less than what we desired. The next time we did it, through his studies, we found that 2 inches better, even though it has a gob more friction. We put the 2-inch pipe in there, and what were we at? What were we, 6 feet, something like that?
Yeah, that's the start before we cut it back. It was like 7.5.
Because, yeah, they did put.
So here we were thinking 3 inch was better. We put the 2-inch, we accommodated for the friction in the 2-inch pipe. But when the 2-inch pipe, it doesn't entrap air like a 3-inch pipe does. It'll work. So strange things happen, and you can't see inside what's going on. But these videos, we won't take time to do it. We're lucky enough to stumble on a guy who finally studied these things. He actually did it because he was trying to distribute this Premier Plastics in British Columbia, was trying to sell these devices to the engineers to design into systems. The engineers would say, we don't know what it does. We don't trust it. So he goes, well, let me show you what it does.
To be honest. All right, there's really only one major point that I'd like to make when we talk about O&M, dealing with the aerators. And Courtney Myers, by the way, see a few service providers out there, and it sounds like with the state sewage code, there might be some opportunities for some more of you to kind of get into the game here. So you might become my new best friend if that all happens. We've been working with O&M of these aerators now for 1.5 years. And we started January of last year. That was courtesy of Laura Faust, was it not?
Oh, yeah.
I believe that was, it's going to take time to set up. Courtesy of Laura Faust. It's always good to know. Right? That's what I want to know. It's not the same truck. Give you a quick update of kind of where we're at as far as occupied homes with aerators. We're at 37, just over 3,700 known. Start counting. This number fluctuates. It fluctuates because there are some that are pulled out, replaced with different types of systems. They go on to sewer. There are ones that we never even knew about. We don't even have record. And when I get the service provider's record of this house at servicing, oh, really? There's an aerator there. I didn't have that in our records. So that number does change. Obviously, there's vacancies, that sort of thing. But those are the ones that we're kind of focused on, the ones that are occupied at this time. At the moment, as of last week, we had just under 2,000 with current contracts. What we generally consider current contracts is within that year or even 2-year contract term, we give a couple month leeway. And that couple months gives them time. Some service providers are generally behind by a couple months just getting out to their servicing. We want to accommodate for that. That also gives a little bit of time frame for the homeowner to realize, oh, I got this notice. Oh, yeah, I have to renew. Okay, I'll pay that in a couple months. Okay, they're not really letting it lag for a serious amount of time. They're getting on it, but there is a couple months in between. So that's what we're considering. So we're about a 53% compliance. Just talking with the service providers, I know that's much greater than when this program had begun. When there was no program here saying that they needed to have service contracts. One of the things that I'm looking at as far as this program is concerned is how are our service providers doing with dealing with this new program? It's a lot to take on. When this maybe wasn't necessarily your major focus of doing routine maintenance, and now all of a sudden we need to get almost 4,000 customers under contract. That's a lot of phone calls you're handling, a lot of site visits, a lot of work for you. So there's a little bit of a balancing act there. So I am definitely open to hear from service providers and how they think it's going. I know I did a mailing this summer. And prior to that mailing, I did kind of send out just a quick email saying, how are things going? Do you want me to move forward with the mailing? Do you not want me at this time? I had, one company was basically like, oh, we're just kind of trying to keep our head above water. I had another company say, go, 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 send them out, we're ready for the work. And most people, I think, were in between of, okay, send them out, but yeah, we're crossing our fingers that we could kind of handle this. And I think that's where most people are. So as we move forward with this, I definitely would like to hear some feedback, mailings and getting people under contract and doing our pesky part of that, how you guys are dealing with that. And we don't necessarily just want to bum rush you with work. We want you to be able to get things done and done well. As far as records are concerned, I've processed over 6,500 records for O&M. That would be routine maintenance, service contracts, that sort of thing. So that's just kind of where we are. Another little good picture I found. Homeowner servicing. Now, when you think of homeowner servicing, I think people think this. They think you got some knucklehead just making up their own cockamamie things out there. 2012, last year, was the first time we really started this program. We started getting phone calls, and both Todd and I got cursed out left and right, of course. And thought, there's a lot of people calling in with actually valid points, that they are wastewater certified. They are mechanics or engineers. They're people that understand these systems, and why couldn't they service their system themselves? So Todd and I kind of worked on that. In 2012, we had 113 people sign up for homeowner servicing. Now this year, we knew this year was going to go gangbusters for us. We knew this was going to be the year, all with the thought in the back of our minds of, okay, this year is going to go gangbusters for homeowner servicing, but when this state code comes into play, and there is a requirement of some form of training, and we'll see how that kind of plays out, that is really going to limit the people that really truly can physically do this and are there, understand it, and those who maybe are just trying to save a few bucks, okay? So this year actually didn't go as gangbusters as I thought. We're at 241 for homeowner service contracts. I actually was thinking, we're going to be about 500. Now, this number's probably still going to go up. We got a ways to go. But I don't think we're going to get anywhere near 500 homeowner servicing contracts. One of my focuses this past spring, was let's see how these homeowners are doing. Okay? We had received that 113 contracts. We received service records from them at the end of 2013, 2012, beginning of 2013. Those are the checklists they have to fill out. So I prioritized those, and I wanted to check up on these folks and see how they're doing. Are these people doing okay? Or are they like the knucklehead putting ladders on tables? What's going on out there? So what I did is I based it off of that 113 and the service records that I obtained, and I prioritized those out. I prioritized the discharging systems because in my mind that has the most effect on public health. They're going right out to the waterways. If you're screwing up your own leach field, well, that's your own darn luck. You're doing that to yourself, really, at that point. You will cause a failure eventually. But we're going to prioritize the people that are discharging, and the service records, when they come back to me, if they just look like people are circling and checking and things aren't matching up, I'm pulling those out. Okay, so that's why I prioritize. And I pulled out 48 that are discharging or looked a little off. Okay, and those are the ones that I went to. So that was about a 42% inspection rate for us. I can tell you, the ones that were satisfactory were beyond satisfactory. Okay, I've been working here for 6 years, not all in sewage, but I've actually never had seen a very clean upflow filter off of a jet. I finally saw a ton of them. Going out and doing these homeowners. There are some homeowners that truly know what they're doing out there. And I was pleasantly surprised to know that there are people actually keeping up with their system and doing what they're claiming that they are doing. So that puts us at about 92% compliant rate. Let me tell you about the couple that we're considering unsatisfactory, a couple minor issues and a couple major issues. 2 very much needed pumps. These were older jets. It looked to me that they basically had not had a motor running until recent times, possibly when this regulation came back, and they just kind of plugged this in. Upflow filters were jet black, puking out nasty stuff, not looking very nice. So those received not only door hangers from me, but letters of orders to get those cleaned up. They were, and those were verified by me as well. And we had one motor not in the system. So that was an elderly woman living with her grandson. The elderly woman was, at that point, moved into some sort of care facility. The grandson was in and out of the home. The motor wasn't there. They ordered to get a new motor, get that taken care of. They did.